Welcome to Conscious Truth. Now, I'd like to start this video with a little bit of background about where I'm coming from. Basically, my background is the Western Hermetic magical tradition, and basically, anyone who's heard of a lifeless levy, that kind of thing. I woke up this morning and it struck me how incredibly similar, or how incredibly well the work of people like Richard Dawkins and Krauss, the Atheists, how their work is such a perfect manifestation of the triumph of matter over spirit. Traditionally, the pentagram is a symbol of the 5 elements. As you see here, it's quite often shown with a human being inside the pentagram. You have the 4 familiar elements and the element of spirit, which is at the top. It both binds and separates the other elements, and is also symbolic of the head being where the consciousness sits, the mind, the thought, the spirit, and it triumphs over matter. You'll probably also be familiar with this image, which shows the 4 elemental symbols, the spirit at the top again, and here's another nice picture I found. Shows the colours. Oh god, someone just saw a ghost. I'm trying to find the other picture. Where's up it? This one. As you can see here, this is the famous Church of Satan inverted pentagram, where, as you can see, the part of the pentagram which represents spirit is at the bottom. This shows the triumph of matter over spirit, and it shows matter being the dominant force and spirit being pushed down to the bottom. And funnily enough, they seem to like drawing a goat's head in the middle, showing that the kind of animal force is more dominant than the human force. Here you see a human being, which is the shape of a pentagram with a head at the top, the mind and the head ruling over the animal forces. Here you see the animal force being dominant and pushing spirit down. Now, when you look at the work of these people, people like him, Krauss, it's very clear that their agenda, or let's not say agenda, because I don't want people to think that I'm a complete conspiracy nut or something. I just like to make this video as scientific as possible. Him and Richard Dawkins, their work is to try to convince people under the guise of science that there's no such thing as a god, there's no such thing as spirit, and that matter is physical, the physical universe is all that exists, and everything can be explained in terms of mathematics and science, what they call science, which is not what I would call science. So they have a very perfect manifestation of this. Spirit does not exist, matter is all that is important, all that exists, according to him. And it's quite funny as well that one of the things that strikes me as just thoroughly unscientific is that if you look at your thoughts, okay, anybody can do this, it's very simple. You just close your eyes. You don't even need to close your eyes. You just become aware of your thoughts and your mind, and then think to yourself, what are those thoughts made of? What is my mind made of? What is my consciousness made of? Is it something I can touch? Is it something material? No. It's very clear to anybody who does this that their thoughts and their mind are not something physical. There's not something that can be touched. They're not something that can be seen. You might see the effects of your thoughts on the brain if you scan your brain and you do sort of experiments to cut open the brain and look at electricity moving around and stuff. But that is not scientific proof that the thoughts come from the brain. There's no scientific proof that proves that thoughts come from the brain. In fact, it's quite the opposite, because anyone, like I just said, who spends 5 minutes becoming aware of their thoughts, it's quite obvious that it's not a physical phenomenon. It's not a phenomenon of matter. It's something else. It's something else. It's not something physical, and therefore that proves the existence of another, what I would call another element, the element of spirit. You can relate the 5 elements, magical elements, quite perfectly with physics. You have earth, which is mass. You have fire, which is energy. You have water, which is... Ooh, I can't really think now. Can't think of it. Well, yeah, you can see them as the 4 fundamental forces as well. The strong force and the weak force. Let's go back to this first. There's a couple of ways of looking at this. You can see it as just the traditional elements that we have here around us. The air that we breathe, the water, the rain, the earth, the fire. And these all being of earth, really, of physical things. And therefore... this shows the spirit being triumphed by the 4 earthly elements. There's also another way of looking at it, and you can look at it as being fire being relating to the strong nuclear force, as it's very short range acting. Strong nuclear interaction. Water being like the electromagnetic force, because it's more of a long range force, and there's interesting dynamic between the strong and the weak nuclear forces, because they compete with each other, and they compete to determine how the nucleus is formed, or I mean, what the nature of the nucleus is. Which is interesting, because fire and water are opposites. And then you could compare the weak... Oh, sorry, what did I just said the strong and the weak? No, I didn't mean that. I meant the strong and the electromagnetic force compete with each other. The weak nuclear force could be likened to air, as it is what creates radiation and sort of radiates out through the air does. And Earth would quite aptly describe the gravitational force, seeing as large masses tend to exhibit gravity very clearly to us. So that's another way of looking at the pentagram, but for our purposes at the moment we could just see this as just the earthly elements with the spirit at the top, and this being the opposite, the spirit at the bottom, being dominated by the earthly elements. So these guys, Krauss and Dawkins, they kind of made it their mission to convince everyone that spirit doesn't exist. And going back to what I was saying a second ago, you know, it's very clear to anyone who gives it a few seconds of thought that your thoughts and your mind, your consciousness, are not physical things. You can't touch them, you can't see them under a microscope. You can't see them. They're non-physical. So this proves that there is another type of energy, if you like, which I would call an element, which is not physical, which is this one, spirit. Can't be seen, yet its effect is clearly seen. Now they would tell you that you know, when you look at the brain and somebody thinks about something, then they'll see a reaction in the brain. But this doesn't prove anything. This just proves that when you think, there's a reaction in the brain. That doesn't prove that the brain has caused the reaction. There's no scientific proof that can ever prove what comes first. It's like the chicken and the egg. You can't prove that the mind the mind is a product of the brain, and you can't really prove that the brain is a product of the mind, even though that is actually what we experience. And if you want to deny what you actually experience, then you're in very dangerous territory. And it's purely scientific to say that what we actually experience, what we all experience as human beings, as rational scientists, what we all experience is that we have a mind, we have thoughts. Every single thing we experience exists within our non-physical mind, within our non-physical thoughts, which can never be touched, can never be seen. And that is true, and these people cannot deny it. And they try and come out and say stuff like, oh, you believe in things that you can't see, you believe in gods that can't be proven, prove that God exists, la 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 la, all this stuff. Okay, well, prove to me that your world, your reality, does not exist within your mind, within your non-physical mind. Can you prove that? In fact, it's quite the opposite. It's evidently clear and proven to everyone that everything they experience is in their mind. How can anybody deny that? You know, you have to take a leap of faith to believe that your mind, this incredible, wondrous, non-physical thing, which is a total mystery, a beautiful spiritual mystery, it's a leap of faith to say that that is simply produced by a lump of meat in your head with electricity going through it. That's what he wants you to believe. Look at this guy. That's what he wants you to believe. That you're just a lump of meat, that there's electricity going through the meat, and that's what creates consciousness and mind and thoughts and everything that you've ever experienced, your entire conception of reality, of the universe and everything, is just some electricity going through a lump of meat. That's what they want you to believe. And there's no proof for it. No one can prove that. It's not scientific. It's absolutely unscientific to say that anyone has ever proven that thought and mind comes from matter. It cannot be proven. There's no scientific experiment that could ever prove it. But they just assume that. They want to start from this one fundamental assumption, which is wrong. It's the fundamental part of their theory that just doesn't hold up. And they won't talk about it. They'll say things like, oh, the God delusion, oh, this part of your brain that makes you think that you experience God. Okay, all you're doing is you're telling someone to think about something, and you're seeing an effect in the brain. So if we assume, well, I wouldn't really say assume, it's truth, okay? We know that what we are fundamentally is a mind, okay? Everything we experience is within our mind. And you have to get this very clearly because, okay, you look at your hand, you can see the colours of your hand, yes? You can see the skin, okay? The light is coming into your eyes, and something's happening in there in the brain, for sure. But ultimately, the impression of the hand is a thought. It's something in your mind. Okay, you touch something. You feel that in your mind. You smell something. The sensation is a smell in your mind. Okay? You hear something. Sound is something which happens in your mind. Okay? So, another way to think about it like this, okay? You take away your eyes, okay? Are you still there? Yes, you're still there. You take away your ears, are you still there? Yes, you're still there. You take away your legs, you take away your whole body. Are you still there? Yes, you're still there. Okay? At what point are you not still there? The fact is that our entire physical body is something which we experience in our mind. We are a mind having an experience of having a body. And that is actually the truth. To say that we are actually a physical body and that our physical body creates consciousness and creates mind is just like is a sort of hypothesis, is a theory. It hasn't been proven, and I don't know how anyone would ever prove that. So anyway, going back to this thing, they'll say, okay, look at the brain. Oh, you're thinking about this, or we can see this electricity in the brain. Yes, okay, that's because the brain is the control system of the body, right? That's why when you move your arm, when you think about something, you do something, different parts of the brain activate, because the brain is like the central computer that controls the body. It's where all the nerves come together and everything gets processed, and well, not everything, but a lot of things get regulated and processed in the brain, like a computer. Okay? So there is obviously a very close relationship between the mind and the brain, obviously, because everything that happens in the mind has to get interfaced with the body, and it does that through the brain. The brain is the interface between the mind, which is a non-physical thing. Remember that. You can't forget that the mind is a non-physical thing, okay? The mind and the consciousness, a non-physical thing, non-physical, non-physical, non-physical. I know you physicists have a very hard time with this. Okay, you're obsessed with physics, you're obsessed with matter, but some things are actually non-physical. Yes, like consciousness and the mind. Are you listening to me? Are you listening? Non-physical, okay? Non-physical. Do you get it? Some things are not physical. They do not fit into the realm of physics. Okay. So you have the non-physical mind, and it interacts with the physical brain, and there is a very close connection. Where was I going with that? That when you have a thought, that they'll see a little electrical thing happening in the nerves in the brain. They'll go, oh look, there it is. That was what caused the thought. But how can you say which caused? It's the chicken and the egg. You can't say that the electrical signal caused the thought any more than you can say the thought caused the electrical signal. I mean, that's just logic. That's just science. You can't do that. But these people, they want to tell you that that's the way it is. That's the way it is. It's like they say it is. I mean, I don't want to get into this sort of being I wanted to keep this as scientific as possible, but I just have to say here, would you let these people babysit your kids? I mean, look at them. Just look at it. I mean, these people want your kids to believe that there's nothing spiritual, that you're just a lump of meat. Just take a good look at them. Take a good look at them. Dawkins and Krauss. Oh, God. I mean, look at it. It's unbelievable. And you hear this guy talking about infinity. I mean, I tend to go off on a bit of a rant with these people because I just find them so obnoxiously disgusting. But you listen to him talking about infinity, and this man, he has the audacity to say, you can't believe in God, you don't know what you're talking about, all this stuff. And then he has the audacity to pretend that he understands infinity. And his way of explaining it is to tell some moronic story, like a sort of children's story about a hotel that has an infinite number of rooms and that you can add an extra room. I mean, it's just, I'm speechless. I don't even have the words for it. It's beyond moronic. I mean, this man does not have any understanding of what infinity is. Infinity is like a string that never ends, okay? It's not made up of pieces. It's not digital. Do you know what I mean? It's analog. It's a continuum that goes on forever. It's beyond. It's something which is transcendent and beyond our mind. It's not something you can understand with mathematics. He'll tell you that you can't understand anything spiritual, God, infinity. You have to have mathematics. Look how complicated it is. Look at all my complicated mathematics I'm going to write on the board. Look at me, I'm so clever. And actually, he doesn't know shit. Sorry, but that's the way it is, okay? Infinity is not mathematics, and it's not little bits. It's not like raisins you line up in a row and you add an extra raisin and they go on forever. I mean, come on. You can't have an infinite number of things. If you had an infinite number of things, who would be making the things? You think if you had an infinite number of raisins and you added a raisin, what, is there someone there with an infinite number of raisin factories that go on forever? What are you talking about? That's just not reality. Okay? You could have an infinite space, an infinite empty space. I mean, I'm not pretending that I understand that, but that apparently seems to be what's going on. We seem to be in an infinite space. Space is a continuum, an analog continuum. It's not made of little bits. It's not quantum. It's not digital. Okay? Just get over it. Okay? Some stuff is quantum, some stuff is not quantum. Okay? If you're interested in that, I'm going to make another video about quantum theory, because they've got it all wrong. Gravity is not quantum. They're continuously trying to find some kind of quantum particle of gravity. They're going to be looking forever, because it doesn't exist. Okay? Space is continuous, smooth and continuous and analog. Okay? It's not made of little pieces. They want everything to be reduced to little pieces, because they can't understand infinity. Ugh. So anyway, these people's agenda, as I was saying before, their primary, what do you call it? Like their modus operandi, their first principles is to tell you that the mind, the thoughts, the consciousness is nothing unusual about it. There's nothing strange. It's just they completely understand it apparently, and it's just electrical signals going through a lump of meat. Okay, and then let's roll it from there. Yeah, let's just let it roll from there, and see where it goes. And this is where it goes. This is where it goes. It goes to the dark side. You know, it goes to ignorance. I mean, ultimately, this is what they're doing. They're putting their head in the sand. They've turned their head upside down. Okay? They're burying their head in the sand. They don't want to see it. They don't want to see the truth, the light. They don't want to see spirit. And I feel sorry for them. I mean, this is ultimately what it comes down to. I mean, I like to criticize them and say how disgusting they are. But I actually feel sorry for this man. He's lost. They're lost. They're lost souls. I mean, look at them. They're so lost. It's obvious. They're lost, and they want you to be. You know, the thing is with these kind of people is they've lost their connection with spirit. They've denied spirit so much. They're so far lost that they want to gather others around them, you know, to make them feel safe and secure, because they've denied spirit. They've denied the creation, and they've denied truth. So they want you and your children to gather around them and support them, which is very sad and pathetic. And I just hope that they can wake up, because, you know, it's quite sad, really. And that brings me to another thing, which is very interesting about these people. I've been watching what they do, and I watch a lot of their videos, and what they tend to do a lot is they tend to get into debates, mainly with Christians, which is very interesting, because it's as if in their world there's, I mean, yeah, to be fair, they have had debates with Muslims and stuff, but essentially it's the same thing. They have debates with people that have these kind of monotheistic, which tend to be quite dogmatic religions. I don't want to offend anyone who's a Christian or a Muslim, but, you know, the way I see it, there is a spiritual truth. There is a creator, a creation, and spirit is real. You know, if you want to give names to it, you want to call it Allah, or you want to call it Jehovah, or whatever, it's like, who cares? Do you know what I mean? Just get over it. It's just words. It doesn't really matter. Okay? The truth is the truth. You can describe it however you want to. If you want to make up moral rules, you know, like, oh, thou shalt not do this, and thou shalt not do this, I mean, you know, fair enough, for yourself, but don't go and try and force that onto everyone else. You know, if they're not harming you, then just leave them alone, you know, like the Wiccan thing, you know, if it hurts no one, do what thou wilt, you know. If you're not hurting anyone else, then that's fine, you know. But they love to sort of get into this sort of Christian debate, you know, like, oh, you believe in Jesus, you believe that, you know, if you believe in anything spiritual, then that means you're a fool because you believe that Jesus died and came back to life, or something like that. They sort of, They lump it all, anything spiritual, they just sort of turn it into a debate about whether you believe in Jesus or whether you believe in Muhammad or something. It's just ridiculous. It's so one-dimensional and just ridiculous. I mean, I'd love to see them have a debate with a Kabbalist or with a Western occultist or a Taoist or even a Buddhist, and talk about the nature of the mind and consciousness. I mean, they wouldn't be able to. They wouldn't know what to say. So let's just... I hope that they wake up one day and they realise what they're doing. It's interesting that they're stuck in this paradigm, atheism and Christianity. Atheism and Christianity. What is that? Why are they so... What is that? It's like this one-dimensional view, which they can't get out of. Well, that'll do for today. Goodbye.